Hello, Algebra 1. Welcome to your lesson for the evening. It's to take note on solving by quadratic formula. Now, in class today, we did talk about the different parts of a quadratic equation. We talked about the A, B, and C, so just a quick reminder that you do need to remember what standard form of a quadratic equation is. And standard form says I have ax squared plus bx plus c. You've got your three different coefficients. You have a, the coefficient of x squared. You have b, which is your middle term. And then you have c, which is your constant. There's no x associated with c. In class today, we practiced manipulating these a's, b's, and c's and getting equations into standard form. And the reason we did that is for today. Now, today we do have this equation, and I would like you to write it down. This is the quadratic formula. You're going to need to memorize this formula. In a later benchmark, we'll explain where the formula comes from, but for now, you need to know that in order to solve for x, we can use this formula. It says take the opposite of b, and then you're going to add and subtract the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and all of that is going to be divided by 2a. Take a second please to copy that down. If you have to, go ahead and pause the video to copy that down. We'll be using that today in our 3 examples. So let's jump right into it. Here's example number 1. If you have to, rewind the video and hit pause to copy that problem down. So let's say I have x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0. In class, we spend a lot of time practicing determining what is a, what is b, and what is c. In this case, a is a 1. That's the number in front of our x squared. So over here, there's nothing there. If there's nothing there, that means that there's a 1. We're looking for our b term, and here it is. Our b term is negative 4. Don't forget that minus sign does go along with it. And then last but not least, we need our c term, and our c term here is positive 3. That's where each of those comes from. You've got your A, you've got your B, and you have your C. So make sure you understand where we're getting those values from. Now that we know what A, B, and C are, you need to take your quadratic formula, which says opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Well, b is 4, so the opposite, b is negative 4. The opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. We're going to have a plus minus b squared. So take your negative 4, square it, and then you're going to minus 4 times whatever a is times whatever c is. All of that over 2 times a. So it looks pretty lengthy here, but it's pretty simple to simplify. The opposite of negative 4, is 4. You've got your plus or minus square root symbol. Now, negative 4 squared is 16. And negative 4 times 1 times 3 is negative 12. And 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, we're not quite done yet. I'm going to continue down here at the bottom. We have 4 plus or minus. Well, 16 minus 12 is 4. All of that's over 2. At this point, everything underneath this square root symbol is already simplified. So we can go ahead and split the equation now that it is simplified. We need to go two ways. We have 4 plus root 4 divided by 2. And then we also have 4 minus root 4 divided by 2. Okay, so root 4 is 2, so 4 plus 2 over 2, that's 6 over 2, that gives me 3. This other one is 4 minus 2 over 2, that's 2 over 2, so my other answer here is 1. So my two answers are 3 and 1 when I use the quadratic formula in order to solve. And that actually makes sense, because if I actually did try to factor x squared minus 4x plus 3, I see it's a minus plus. I would have to have a minus minus. My PQ is 3, so that's 1 and 3. Take each of those, you set them equal to 0, like we had been practicing with our former technique. X minus 3 equals 0. X must be 3. And then x minus 1 equals 0. Well, x must be positive 1. So there's our check. Okay, that's the factoring method. Quadratic formula all over there in the bottom. So go ahead and take a moment, pause the video, so you can copy that down. So let's move on to example number 2. In example number 2, go ahead and take a moment, please. Try to try to solve 2x squared plus x minus 10 without factoring, and instead using the quadratic formula. Pause the video, try it out, and then hit play to see the solution. I'm going to move over this very quickly here. A is 2, B is 1, and C is negative 10. There's the 2. There's the 1. There's, negative 10. Okay, so that's where all of that comes from. Let's just erase this so it's not so messy here. Okay. Moving along, we remember quadratic formula says opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All of that has to be over 2a. Well, that's negative 1 plus or minus 1. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, times negative 10 is 80. 2 times 2 is 4. So this can move pretty quickly. We have negative 1 plus or minus root 81 over 4. Now I see that my square root area, that square root is fully simplified. So I can go ahead and split, our equation into two different parts, which is negative 1 plus root 81 over 4, and negative 1 minus root 81 over 4. Well, that's negative 1 plus 9, which is 8 over 4, and that gives me 2. This other one says negative 1 minus 9 over 4. That's negative 10 over 4. So now we end up with a fractional answer, and it's improper. So that's going to be negative 1 and, negative 2 and 1/2. There's our two answers that solve this quadratic equation. Go ahead and pause it, copy it down. Got one more example for you. Example number 3. Okay, take a moment, please. Try to solve this. Problem using the quadratic formula. Okay, so let's go ahead and take care of this. We've got a is equal to -1, we have b is equal to 3, we have c is equal to 4. Now I know some of you may be thinking, we have a negative a here and we said we don't want that situation. You'll notice that in the quadratic formula it takes that into consideration. So we have the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So -3 plus or minus the square root of 9. -4 times -1 is 4 times 4 is 16 over -2. -3 plus or minus 25. Again, the square root symbol is fully simplified. We can split our equation now. -3 plus 5 over -2 and -3 minus 5 over -2. So we're moving pretty quickly here. -3 plus 5 is 2 over -2. Well, that gives me -1. And this gives me -8 over -2. Negative divided by negative is a positive, and there's my two answers. X is equal to 1, -1, and x is equal to 4. Alright, that's your last example today. Thanks for doing your homework this evening. You're awesome, and we'll see you in class tomorrow.